Darwin's theory is a good theory, but nevertheless it is incomplete because it does not take into account purpose. We cannot solve all problems from rational thinking. In fact, if we could, then machines could replace us very easily. From leaping and change our physiology, we can actually create our own reality.
Since I'm one speaking with the expert, because this is something I hear so much on the internet, that we create our own reality and we have the observer effect, but I feel like people nowadays are oversimplifying the observer effect, that if I just observe a reality that I want, it will manifest. But what would you say is the conditions that must be in place for the manifestation to actually occur in the physical reality?
Yeah.
Today, I had the pleasure to speak with a physicist, a pioneer in quantum consciousness, who is rewriting everything that we know about human evolution, the nature of reality. Amit Goswami. And we're going to talk about a very hot topic. He just published his new book, The Ascent of Humanity, where he suggests that we are not just random accidents of biology, but part of something much bigger. Are you ready for this? Because if this is true, it raises one of the biggest questions humanity has ever faced. Who or what is guiding our evolution? I am so excited to be here chatting with you again. And let's go to the big news. So you've just published your new book, The Ascent of Humanity, that challenges a lot of the things that we thought we knew about evolution. And in most schools, right, we are taught about Darwin's theory of evolution, that evolution was random. But in your book, you are challenging this idea because you are saying this theory is incomplete. Can you please explain to us this amazing shift in perception?
Darwin's theory is a good theory, but nevertheless it is incomplete because it does not take into account purpose. It takes into account only the cause of evolution. The theory consists of, let's review the theory a little bit. There are hereditary aspects in the body of the organism called genes. Darwin didn't know about genes. Genes were later on confirmed, but Darwin presupposed that there must be a component that is hereditary in the organism. And these genes mutate. By various reasons, they change. And these changes then are to be selected by nature in order for the organism to survive better. This is the idea. Nature is always changing. For example, weather can get much worse. As you know, there are huge changes of climate in our billions of years of history.
Mm-hmm.
And this climatic change, the organism always has to adjust. And so Darwin is saying that that adjustment can be thought of as the nature selecting out of all the gene mutations, the particular mutations that will help the organism to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a survival drive for survival of the fittest, sometimes it's called. Chance mutation and survival necessity, shortened as chance and necessity theory of Darwin. So the theory sounds excellent, but it is suggesting that the evolution is a slow and continuous process. In this theory, it is very hard to understand how an organ is ever produced. For example, an eye from scratch, because an eye takes thousands upon thousands of mutations to produce it.
Mm-hmm.
So thousands upon thousands of genes have to change, and all those changes have to be selected for helping evolution.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, the probability of that happening is virtually zero, because most of the gene mutations would be useless. Nothing would be gained by preserving them, right? Because useless things happen much more than useful things. So useful genes would occur very rarely, and then for thousands of useful genes to accommodate, gene mutations to accumulate and making a new organ is out of the question. Instead, what must be happening is that organs are made because there is a purpose behind evolution. Evolution is purposive, not random. This is the idea. And the purposive evolution, the theory for that was given by Lamarck, who said that evolution occurs through changes in the somatic material itself. Changes are changes in the somatic material that is also hereditary, Lamarck assumed, but he could not prove it. And because Darwin's idea of genes was proven later, people accepted Darwin's theory, but this evolution of acquired characteristic that Lamarck suggested, that theory became unpopular because Lamarck could not prove that acquired characteristic has any hereditary mechanism that takes into future generations. For example, suppose I make a change, I have a huge cut here and the finger acquires a mark. My finger then has a clear mark on the finger because of that wound. Will that mark last in the next generation? Will my child acquire that mark? No way.
I see.
This kind of change in the protein is not hereditary. They're not acquired by our children. This is the problem.
So you're testing both them together combined.
So my theory was successful because I could count both together, because I showed how these Lamarckian changes can also be hereditary.
I see.
And we do that by defining a very beautiful concept: hardware and software. Organs can be looked upon as hardware plus physiology, and then software, vital software to help make the physiology.
What would be the software?
Software is connected to how to feel. Software is connected with our feelings. So every organ should not be thought of just the hardware, but also software. And it is this software that is hereditary. You see? So the software has the magic of what proteins to make. Every organ has certain genes that are activated. These activated genes make the right proteins to make the organ functions. And these gene activators, consciousness handles the gene activators on one hand, and the organizing field called morphogenetic field on the other hand, and parallelly adjust them, just like an architect makes a building. What does the architect do? He makes a blueprint first. With the help of the blueprint, architect knows, okay, here goes the kitchen, here goes the bedroom, here is the faucet, like that. Similarly, consciousness makes us by looking at an organ in a purposive way. This organ has to perform this function. How can it perform this function? I will make assured that there is a blueprint of the function on one hand, and looking at the blueprint, I adjust the organ to develop that kind of function by promoting those particular genes to be activated that will make the right proteins for the organ function. For example, for the brain, the organ function is thinking, so those genes will have to be activated, which will make the proteins associated with thinking. Okay, so in this way, the organ function is made with the help of the vital software. And how do we know that there is vital software? Because the movement of the vital software we can feel in places of our body that are called chakras.
And how do we feel the chakras? How can we?
Everybody can feel the chakras. Chakras are close to the organs in our body. For example, in the heart region, there's a chakra right here in the heart, as I'm showing it. There is the physical heart, of course, and there is also a very important organ of the thymus gland, which is part of the immune system. So those are the two organs of the heart. And so the heart chakra, the morphogenetic field, the software, the movement of the morphogenetic software that we feel as love, that is connected with the function of the elevated function of the immune system and the heart. Ordinarily, immune system is defensive. It defends the body against intruders. It makes the decision of, okay, this intruder, this virus is not me, and therefore it attacks the virus and kills it. That's the job of the immune system. But when we love, we make a quantum leap. We suspend the defensiveness of the immune system. Instead, heart becomes, in addition to being a blood pump, it becomes a organ which is capable of caring for another person. In other words, love. Physiology itself changes because of these quantum leaps. So the idea that we have of Ascent of Humanity is that today, very few people have made such quantum leaps. Not everybody can love. We know this already. Only a very limited number of us can love, or we can pretend to love. But truly caring for another is a fairly rare thing. Maybe 20%, 25% of humanity can do it. No more than that. But with these quantum leaps, as we evolve, when we make these quantum leaps en masse, then the evolution of humanity will take off a completely new phase. Today is based on rationality. When we take these quantum leaps, it will be based on not only rationality, but also intuition.
When I start to study, for example, about the heart is the first organ to be formed when we are embryos, babies. It's the last one that dictates the end of life. And it's like the Institute Heart Math, for example, they measure the electromagnetic field of the heart. Would you say unlocking the chakra of the heart is one of the biggest quantum leaps we as humans can make? What stage are we at in the sense of the chakras in human evolution? Because that's something you tap into your book as well.
Heart plays a very important role. My understanding really is very close to what you're saying, that if human being, right now we are very brain-based. We make decisions on the basis of rational thinking. If heart chakra is elevated, namely takes a quantum leap, which I call awakening of the heart. If heart is awakened to love, remember, ordinary function of the heart chakra is such that it only defends. The energy we get from it is defensiveness. It's easy to experience. A stranger comes in our vicinity, how do you feel? You don't feel love. We feel a little anxiety. We feel a little fear. We feel a little defensiveness. I have to defend against this person, right? When we love someone, that defensiveness changes into vulnerability. Instead, we become vulnerable. It's okay. I want to love this person, so I will suspend the defensiveness. So we suspend the defensiveness, and at that moment, the heart makes a quantum leap. That's what the HeartMath Institute measured, that the heart becomes coherent. It starts making quantum movement. And in that quantum movement, the heart stops being just a blood pump. It also can have physiology that enables to produce genes that will make proteins that help us take care of another person. An amazing fit.
Beautiful. If evolution is guided, like you mentioned in your book, right? And we have a purpose, then why ancient civilizations, for example, the Mayans, the Egyptians, who seem to have access to a higher consciousness, why did they collapse? And why they didn't keep evolving? And why do we seem as humanity to be in this cycle?
If we go back to the beginning of history, the anthropological data now is very clear. Fully 70,000 years ago, we had a cognitive revolution, it seems. And in that moment, we were able to self-domesticate ourselves. Domestic animals, domestic animals are much more gentle than the wild animals, right? They can make friends with us. They can make friends with each other as well. They're not violent, as much violent. They still, of course, have some violence, but not as much anymore, right? Who domesticated the human beings? We domesticate animals, but who domesticated us? So the idea is that we self-domesticated ourselves. We domesticated ourselves. So this kind of quantum leaping that I'm talking about, that quantum leaping started some 70,000 years ago en masse. We have been taking these quantum leaps where you are able to self-domesticate, stop some of our violence, suspend our immune defensiveness. Okay. And then from that, some of us developed altruism. When somebody needs help, we can give help. This is called altruism, right? But is everybody altruistic? This is the key. Everybody is not altruistic. Only 40% of us have learned to be altruistic. It's not a universal instinct. Altruism is not an universal instinct. It's only half of humanity, roughly a little bit less than half of humanity is altruistic. And altruism is the beginning of these quantum leaps. With altruism, we can be good to each other. It goes beyond self-domestication. So these people who have altruism and people who don't have altruism, you can think of them roughly, very roughly, as good if you have altruism, evil if you don't have altruism. Not having altruism means that you don't have any of the other future positive energy circuits in the body. Only negative emotional circuits in the body. Only hate, only violence, only domination. These things will be available to you. But love, goodness, justice, beauty, these things will not be available to you. So good versus evil, this battle that goes on. And every civilization, sometimes that is led by people who are basically good, who not only have altruism, but also have compassion for people. They help the people to grow. Whereas there will be other leaders. In America, we see right now, America has elected a leader who is taking the country towards violence rather than towards goodness. So this is the problem. The leaders can be good, leaders also can be evil. So the question of evolution of humanity towards the future becomes murky because somehow we have to change this tendency of good leaders followed by evil leaders. Somehow we have to change humanity so that there is no future evil leaders. How do we do that? This is the big challenge. So bulk of the book I have addressed this issue, that how do we create a future in which in the future, nobody will be evil anymore. Everybody will be good.
Do you think that's possible in this world of duality? That's like the main purpose of humans is to finally not have that evil and good battle?
I think it is entirely possible. We have to go beyond rational thinking. See, the rational thinking is what is holding us up because we have rational thinking ability, we think that we can solve all problems by rational thinking. This is not right. We cannot solve all problems from rational thinking. In fact, if we could, then machines could replace us very easily because machines today, we are building machines which someday will be able to do rational thinking better even than us. But that will never happen because machines cannot take us over. Machines do not have everything that we have.
Yeah, that's something I was going to ask because a lot of people have a lot of fear. Basically, everybody that I talk to nowadays, they say AI is scary because the speed that it's evolving and the information that it can process and gather is like beyond of what even we can like gather and process that fast. So do you think that perhaps we collectively created AI so we could tap more into our intuition and less of the rational mind?
I think this is the right way to think. Instead of thinking that AI is going to take over humanity somehow, but AI cannot take over humanity because AI does not have everything we have. We have not only the capacity of rational thinking, we also have the capacity of intuitive thinking. This the AI does not have. AI does not have a self. We have a self. So we should not be scared of AI. Instead, we should think of AI as our helper. Since AI can do all the rational thinking, if you are freed from all the rational thinking tasks that we have to waste our time on, we can devote that extra time in developing the capacity for intuitive thinking. This capacity does not come naturally. We don't have the ability of having instinctual circuits of intuition. We have to make those brain circuits, which enables us to intuit. You have to change brain's physiology so that it can make it is amenable to extrasensory perception through which intuition is coming to us.
So how do you think we can individually, practically in our lives, daily lives, tap more into our intuition?
First of all, we have to develop the idea of feeling. Feeling is a very important thing. We touched upon it when we talked about love in the heart. So if we have feeling in the heart, then that will tell me that we are intuiting already, because feeling in the heart comes directly from consciousness as the archetype of love. Heart otherwise is just a blood pump, but when the heart makes a quantum leap, it can intuit and translate the intuition into feeling. Simultaneously, brain gives meaning to the feeling. In this way, we create the positive emotion that we call love. So when we have this, then we have an extra utility, extra device in our hand in order to change people. We don't have to use violence anymore. Instead, we can change people's choice. In quantum physics, quantum physics forces don't produce the changes in movement of objects. In Newtonian physics, if you want to change the movement of an object, you have to use force. And this is why in Newtonian thinking, which is what most people today think, Newtonian way, the rational thinking is Newtonian. And this Newtonian thinking, you cannot really change another person's opinion. You can only force the person to follow you. Okay? But in intuitive thinking, quantum thinking, it doesn't work that way. In quantum thinking, it's a choice. Forces only gives us possibilities for consciousness to choose from. How the consciousness will actually choose, that is still what creates reality. So I can change your choice by persuading you to see that the wrongness of your choice. In this way, a quantum leader can affect his followers to follow the good.
So we could do this through the power of our mind, let's say.
Power of mind, power of love, power of good energy, goodness energy. This way the Shraddha said something wonderful at the turn of this, in the 20th century. He said something like, someday we'll learn how to harness the energies of love.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So this is how we harness the energies of love. We change how you choose your actions. Not by using force, by using the energies of love, energy of persuasion.
As we were speaking about how we tap more into the intuition is through our feeling, but nowadays, a lot of people in our society have our feelings blocked, right? You can see, and you can see how society is designed to drink alcohol, numb yourself, numb your feelings. So do you think there is like an evil force, or like is that unconscious collective consciousness that is just playing this role of keeping the humans from accessing their own feelings so we don't evolve as fast?
It is not a evil force that is outside of us. The evil force is built into us. This is that thing about the human condition. The brain has negative emotional brain circuits. This is built into us. We don't have to do anything. We are born with it. But altruism is not built into us. 40% of us are not born with altruism circuits in their brain. Only 40% have altruism. Well, another 40% don't have altruism, and the other 20% are in between. So you see the problem. tremendous negativity built into the brain, very little positivity built into the brain, and therefore brain becomes overall negative. This is why naturally built-in evil. How do we fight it? We have potentiality of being good. The goodness is all in potentiality. And it takes intention, intuition, creativity, all these things in order to get the potential real, potential actualized. And this actualization is the challenge. How do we get our future? Future is very clear. Future is the intuitive mind. We are in the rational mind today, but someday, maybe 100 years later, maybe 500, who knows? But someday we'll get to the intuitive mind, where everybody will be able to use this intuition of love and change people by persuasion, not through violence. But for that day to come today, we have our work cut out for us. We have to make some changes. We have to make this potentiality into actuality. How do we do it is part of the book talks about how to make these potentialities of love into an actuality of a loving being a loving being, how to become a loving being.
Would you say that's the main purpose of life, of physical life?
Exactly, and you use the word purpose, and this purpose drives evolution. This is the basic Lamarckian idea. So we have Evo Devo, Darwinian evolution by cause. That's where chance and necessity comes in. And then Lamarckian evolution of purpose. That's where all the software and how to make this positive emotional software, how to make the software hereditary, and all this comes in.
And how would you define consciousness for people who are getting to know more about spirituality, quantum physics? How would you define consciousness, and where is consciousness located?
See, you are asking the question as if consciousness was an object.
Yeah.
But look at consciousness is not just an object. How do you think of consciousness? Okay, so I have consciousness. I am having a conscious experience. I am seeing you. So I say I see you. Who is the object? What is I? I is called the subject, self, the experiencer. I am experiencing you separate from me. Right?
Yes.
This I is not an object. So where is consciousness located? Suppose this consciousness is an object, it's located at some place. Consciousness is not like that. Instead, consciousness is the ground of all being. Everything that happens, everything that is, comes from consciousness.
So would you say we are fractals of a macro consciousness?
We are fraction of a vaster consciousness. We are like a ray of light from the sun. But the sun is also an object, so this is not a very good metaphor, but at least it covers the idea that sun has many rays. So we are individual rays of consciousness. That's the way of thinking.
And then based on that non-locality of consciousness, would you say is even possible the idea of us tapping into the mind of people who passed away, for example, the greatest mind of Einstein and all of that, because all it is consciousness. So it never disappears. So
exactly. So a leader who has quantum leaped at the heart chakra, such a leader can elevate another person to also take a quantum leap at the heart chakra. Through persuasion, through inspiration, through create the intuitive passage to the intuitive mind. To ordinary people, this passage is not clear at all. But to the person who has done it, it is very, very easy to do. It's just like being. It's an extrasensory perception is something that we do by intuition, intention. Intuition follows the intention. But how to make intention is something that one has to learn. Ordinarily, we make intention for only ourselves. When we start to generalize our intention and make it in consonance with the movement of consciousness, that's where purpose comes in. Overall movement of consciousness is purposive. But generally speaking, human beings don't act in consonance with the movement of consciousness. This is where evil comes in, inappropriate action comes in. When we synchronize ourselves to act in conjunction, in step, in phase with the movement of consciousness, then our movement also becomes purposive. And then only we can create the purpose that consciousness has in mind for us, namely intuitive mind in the future.
So do you think we individually all have a purpose that consciousness, the higher consciousness, is guiding us through that?
Yes, I really think that consciousness is guiding us, except that we have to hear it. This guidance comes via intuition. We have to hear it. Then we have to follow up with the creative process. When we follow up the intuition with the creative process, then we get creative insight. Then we really can change. Those awakening that we talked about before, that awakening requires a quantum leap. It has to, the process is that you hear the intuition first, through intention, then intuition, and then the creative process.
How do we differentiate if it's the intuition or the higher consciousness speaking to us, or if it is our mind?
Yeah, this is a very good question. So intuition are translated in two ways. Intuitions come to us through mental thinking, called intuitive thinking. Intuitions also comes to us through feelings, intuitive feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So if a thought is accompanied by a feeling, then it is intuitive thought. If the thought is just purely thought, then it's rational thinking.
I see.
So we should look for thought associated with feeling. For example, people talk about gut feeling. Have you heard the word gut feeling?
Yes.
People feel sure. I feel in my gut that this is true. That's an example of intuitive thinking.
Mm-hmm.
When we think intuitively, that not only I'm thinking, I'm also feeling a feeling in the gut, in the navel chakra.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That gut feeling tells me that this intuition is different. It's not ordinary thinking. Ordinary thinking does not come with a gut feeling.
Mm-hmm. And then the more we lean into that, I think the more we strengthen our ability to trust, right? Our
Yes.
intuition, as we
The more we tune into that, the more we develop the capacity to trust, capacity to love, capacity to be moved by meaning and purpose. Our life become purposive. Then we can tune in with the movement of consciousness, and then we can make our own reality. You must have heard the phrase, we create our own reality.
Yes.
It's not easy, but we can. Once we get quantum leaping and change our physiology, we can actually create our own reality.
So since I'm speaking with the expert, because this is something I hear so much on the internet, that we create our own reality and we have the observer effect, but I feel like people nowadays are oversimplifying the observer effect, that if I just observe a reality that I want, it will manifest. But what would you say is the conditions that must be in place for the manifestation to actually occur in the physical reality?
Yes. This is the question. We simplify it, oversimplify it, and we think that all we have to do is to intend and sit, and that's it. No, it's not that simple. Yes, we intend and sit, but we have to sit and then make ourselves in consonance with the movement of consciousness. When we do that, then only intuition comes. Otherwise, intuition doesn't come, because I do not choose in my ego. You see, I choose my reality, I create my reality, but I should create my reality not in the ego, but when I am in that ground of being, the sun consciousness. Previously, we identified like a sun, and we are the individual rays. The individual rays do not create reality. It's the sun which creates reality, metaphorically. Okay? And so we have to connect to the sun. How do we connect to the sun? By attuning ourselves to the movement of the consciousness as a whole.
Beautiful. Thank you for explaining. Another question that I have, speaking of that I've seen videos going viral on TikTok, for example, they are talking about how reality only exists when we observe. And some people were saying like, oh, if I am not home, I'm not observing my house, then my house doesn't exist. Can you please explain that? People.
Nothing exists until an observer experiences it. Quantum physics says,
Mhm.
and this is correct. It has been verified that nothing can happen unless
We observe.
we observe. Observer is essential.
I even saw someone joking around, so I'm gonna stop observing my bills and they're gonna disappear.
But it's not that simple. Observation is not just wishing that let there be a sandwich and immediately sandwich will appear on my hand. It doesn't happen that way because sandwiches are very big objects.
Mhm.
Big objects don't move in possibility that fast. Moves very, very slowly. I'll tell you how long it takes for a sandwich to appear on my hand. It will be more than the lifetime of the universe itself, more
Mhm.
than 10 million years. So you can see that it's not going to happen by just sitting. No, the idea is the new purpose has to come to us via software modification, not through hardware. So software modifications. So we have to change ourselves, the way we behave, the way we think, the way we feel. We talk about good and evil before we have to transmute ourselves, transform ourselves from this built-in evil in the brain to much more good in the brain. We have to build positive emotional brain circuits to balance out the negative. And then we can do all this thing wonderful creation by just intending.
Would you have any tip for someone who is going through a hard time and there's so much in their heads and just feeding off that negative loop, how to break free from the negative loop so they can move with purpose?
So what one has to do is to have change yourself first to able to be able to love. If you can love, if you can love the other, you are directly connecting to the person's heart, and the person will be touched. When we say that I am touched by a inspirational leader, this is what we mean. Inspirational leader directly talks to our heart, not only to our brain, but also to our heart. A feeling of compassion that we can feel from the other. So our leaders have to have compassion that the followers can feel. And if the followers can feel that, then the follower will also follow the leader and develop compassion in themselves. So in this way, the change that can happen depends on very much development of a few heroes in our society. And they have to take this hero's journey to awaken their heart, to awaken their navel chakra, to awaken their brow chakra. And so that the awakened physiology is available to them, awakened thinking, awakened intuition, awakened creativity is available to them. With that, they will be able to guide other people and change them too. And then the world will change.
Would you think it's possible for in the future for most humans to have unlocked all chakras in their body and ascend? Do you think that's the path of evolution?
Well, right now the situation is that most people even don't even know about their chakras. So right now our first challenge is to teach them about chakras. Let me tell you how to tell that you have chakras.
Uh-huh.
Okay, put up your palm together. Make a little gap. Close your eyes, and you can feel tingles, right?
Okay.
Okay, now look at me. Move your palms like this. The tingles will be amplified.
Yeah.
Feel the amplification of the tingle. And now put the pumps like this. The tingles will be amplified even more.
Yes.
Now bring those pumps to your heart chakra and feel the heart. Do you feel tingles in the heart?
I do. Very
See,
strong.
That's the way to feel the energy at a chakra. So it's not difficult to feel the energy at a chakra at all. We
So
can
feel from each chakra doing this exercise.
For each chakra, we can do exercises. Many exercises are available. They're called Qigong, Pranayama. In India, they are developed. In China, they are developed. In many countries, they have been developing. Japan developed some of them.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for for this explanation, this beautiful explanation. Definitely gonna incorporate this into my daily practices. And the last question that I have for you is, if you could pick the main thing from Amit now, that from everything that you've learned throughout life, what would you tell Amit, the young Amit, your younger self?
I'll just tell that to be very watchful of the intuitive dimension of our experience. This is something that nobody told me. Nobody told me about intuition and creativity very clearly. So I had to do it all by myself. And I really did not open up to intuition and creativity until I was 37-year-old. I was getting by with basically rational thinking with a little bit of natural creativity that I had, that I brought from my past life. So I would tell my young one, they pay attention to intuition, and I'll teach her meditation so they can tune into intuition much more easily.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Emmett. And if people want to know more about your book, where can they find this, and where can they get more information about your work?
My website is amitgoswami.org. AMITGOSWAMI, one word, .org.
I'll put it here.
amitgoswami.org.
And the
And we have
book is available on
is available at Amazon.com.
really amazing, this new point of view of the evolution with purpose. And I think that's really a mind-blowing way of seeing the evolution of humanity.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that.